What is going on, everyone? I hope you are all doing well today. I am joined once again by the amazing Josie Woah. Josie, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. I'm so excited to talk with you again. I feel like it's been a while.
It has been a minute. Congrats. First off, you're almost at 10,000 subscribers. That is
Thank
amazing.
you.
So,
Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Yeah, me and Josie found each other when we were both relatively small, and now we both just kind of
Yeah.
cheering each other on, and it's
Yeah.
awesome. So, but for today's discussion, I thought it would be really awesome to kind of just talk about Nintendo's next gen system, which the internet and every Nintendo person right now is calling the Switch Pro, the system that apparently has been rumored for what feels like years now and it's just never coming out. It's rumored and rumored and rumored and nothing ever comes from it. So I thought it would be really awesome just to kind of just discuss, eventually Nintendo is going to announce another system at some point. So they're going to eventually move on from Switch. And so I just thought it'd be really cool to kind of talk about where Nintendo could go with that and, and when that possibly could be. So thanks for joining me today. So
Of course.
I don't know if this happened to you, but what made me stop trusting like all the Switch Pro rumors and all that stuff was it was back in 2021. There were all of these leaks suddenly, like not even just leaks, like retailers were talking about it and everything. Like there's a new system about to be announced, and everybody was just jumping on the bandwagon that it was going to be Switch Pro. And I was like, oh my, I'm really excited. It's probably going to happen. And then it was the Nintendo Switch OLED. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is not what was promised. And so I was burned by all that. And I was like, never again. I'm never trusting these again. But I do believe that Nintendo is working on something new, like the next gen, whatever it is.
Yes, for sure.
So
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily think like the Switch Pro, like the souped up Switch is not coming, but the next generation Switch is coming. I think a Switch 2, as all the other influencers are saying, is more realistic now. And yeah, I had a very similar experience. So the Switch OLED was announced and I was like, what the heck have I been led on to think by like every YouTuber out there. And then half of them were like, no, this isn't the Switch Pro. We're gonna get an extra Switch Pro, and it's like, no, that's not happening. Let's be realistic here. And at that point, we didn't even really need a Switch Pro. It's not like Nintendo was gonna take advantage of more hardware. It's like they will take advantage of a Switch 2 because it's a whole new system, but just a souped up version is, out of the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so before we kind of dive into all things Switch 2 next generation, I kind of wanted to kind of talk about currently where the Nintendo Switch is. And I think personally it's the best system that Nintendo has made. Being able to take it with you wherever, just a huge library of games to play. I kind of wanted to kind of talk about like where were you when the Switch was announced and kind of what's been your favorite games to play on it. Did you get it? Yeah, so go for it.
I love this question. Yeah, I was just getting into gaming more when the Switch came out. I had my Wii U and I loved my Wii U, but both of us are relatively young, so when the Switch came out, I was still a kid, and I was just excited at the concept of it. I got it in April around my birthday, and I was just super excited to have this brand new system. I got ARMS with it. That was my first game on the system, which was funny. So I have a big soft spot for ARMS to this day because of that. And I've loved it. I think it definitely is like, I struggle to say it's the best Nintendo system ever, just because like I didn't live through some of the other ones. Like I don't really know how monumental they were in their time, but at least in my lifetime, it's at least my favorite Nintendo console that's ever been around. I think it's really great, and it's done a lot to just like bring me and my friends together, which is random because a lot of people play video games solo, and I also do that. But the portability of it and stuff has just been really fun throughout the years of volleyball tournaments and like just all this random stuff that comes with being a young person. Like going out and playing Mario Kart is always very fun, and it's a thing I look forward to, and it's a thing I still have done for like 6 years at this point, almost every weekend with my friends. So Yeah, I just love it. And I guess my favorite, you said favorite game on the Switch. That's hard. Box Boy probably. So I made a video that was like my top 10 favorite games on Switch, and I said that at number 1 is Tears of the Kingdom because I love it. But I guess if we were like asking my favorite, I gave it to Tears of the Kingdom over Box Boy because I appreciate Tears of the Kingdom more. I think it does a lot more for gaming. I think it is objectively a better game, but to me personally, my favorite is definitely Box Boy and Box Girl. And then this one doesn't count because it's a port, but Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is like one of my favorite games of all time. So that one as well. I love the Switch, man. There's so many good games. Like I could talk about all of these games and like gush for hours just because I love it so much. What would yours be?
Yeah, you know me, Zelda fan. I have to say Tears.
Yeah.
I have to say Tears of the Kingdom. I thought Breath of the Wild was amazing when it released. I got that on launch day. I got the Switch on launch day with Breath of the Wild, and it was right when I was in high school at the time, and it was right when we got out for spring break, and so I spent my entire spring break playing Breath of the Wild. And so when they announced that they were going to do a sequel to it, and then I was like, okay, how in the world are they going to top such an amazing game? Tears of the Kingdom definitely topped Breath of the Wild, in my opinion, just with dungeons, story, everything. And so, but yeah, I remember watching that Nintendo Switch presentation when they were going into that whole deep dive of that system and what it was going to be, and then they debuted that final trailer for Zelda, and then they showed off Mario Odyssey for the first time, and ARMS, and Splatoon 2, and they were showing that all these some of these big games from Wii U were going to be transitioned over to Switch. And so I was really excited. And then my dad was watching it with me, and he immediately, right when the pre-orders went up, he managed to snag me a pre-order, and I was like, thank you, Dad. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I ended up getting it on launch day with Breath of the Wild, and it was amazing. And so, and yeah, like I said earlier, my favorite game is probably Tears of the Kingdom. There's no.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what you were saying too, like being able to play with others. You know, me and my family also are playing a lot more now. I have a few good friends of mine from high school who I still keep in touch with, and we still get together and we play Mario Kart, and it's so much fun. And one of the coolest things that I really like about the Nintendo Switch is the fact that they brought in a lot of their classic games. Like my dad grew up in the classic era of Nintendo, like NES and SNES and the N64. And so when Nintendo started bringing those games to Switch, those old games, me and him started playing those games together again, and it was really awesome to do that. And so, the classic era with the modern era kind of bridged together, and I think that's a really cool accomplishment that Nintendo has done with the Switch. And so,
well, and like the way they incorporate it in NSO, and I know this is sort of polarizing. A lot of people don't like NSO, but for me, having not played a lot of those games and now being able to has been fantastic. Like half of what I play on my Switch is their old retro titles, and like honestly, half of the content I make is about their like old and retro titles. So yeah, like you said, it's very, very cool that it's all under one roof. Like finally, I mean, Virtual Console sort of did that, but I honestly think this is almost better because there's a lot of games that I'm experiencing on NSO that I would not spend money on, but since it's already in the subscription, which I do pay for, but it's not as much as buying different games and stuff, I think it helps and brings, like awareness to these games that I would have never played.
Yeah, imagine having to buy NES Metroid.
Yeah, nope. If I had to pay for that thing,
Oh, yeah.
That would have been a way harsher video. I still get comments on that video every single day. There are comments on that video. They're like, skill issue. And I'm like, no, it's a bad game.
I'll say this, though. I'm glad that the game was received well upon release, because then Nintendo made more of them and improved on it. So. Yeah,
good for the time, for sure. I mean, It's like half of the games I review. I'm like, I can see how this was good at the time, but now... No.
Yeah, now Nintendo just needs to bring Metroid Zero Mission to Game Boy Advance NSO, and we'll be good to go. Sooner or later, it's got to happen. So,
I want to play that game so bad.
Yeah, it's great. It's an amazing game. But So obviously Nintendo Switch has had an amazing run and apparently still has a lot to go, because apparently 2024 is filled to the brim already with Paper Mario and Mario versus Donkey Kong and Princess Peach getting her own game, which my little
Oh, I'm
sister,
so excited.
yeah, that's just exciting. My little sister is super excited for that. She really is.
Yeah.
She's looking forward to the Princess Peach game. But a lot of people have continued to ask the question, when is Nintendo going to announce the next system? I mean, it seems like Nintendo is kind of falling further behind in terms of power, and we have these bigger companies like Microsoft and Sony with Xbox and PlayStation. Their power. I mean, it's no secret. Their systems are powerhouses. Their games look, they look very cinematic. They're more, I mean, almost movie-like in a way if you really think about it. Some of their games, and so the question really is, when is Nintendo going to catch up with that? Are they going to have a 4K system? And that's the first question I kind of wanted to jump into. Do you think that with this next system, do you think that it will catch up to where Microsoft and Sony are? Will it have that 4K powerhouse? And that is it's up for debate.
Yeah. I think that this is going to be a system more on par with like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Series X or Xbox One X, and instead of the newer consoles we have. As much as I wish that Nintendo would, I just don't see that being a priority for them. And I also think they're a fairly consumer-friendly company for the most part, who would want to keep their costs lower. And with things going up, with PS5s being $500, Xboxes being $500, I think if Nintendo keeps themselves at that $300 price point, they're going to be a lot more appealing to the mass market. And so, like, I think that might halt them from doing anything too crazy, at least graphically. I can totally see 4K being a thing with upscaling and DLSS, but I don't think it's going to be like native 4K at all. I think that's a little bit unrealistic, and I don't think that it's going to be 4K handheld. I think this is all going to be upscaled through the dock or something, which is something that people have rumored forever. And I think it just makes sense, really. But
yeah, I would totally agree. I think because Nintendo has always prioritized on making sure that the games are, first of all, very well polished, and they play well first, and then they also focus on making sure the games are fun. And the common denominator I've seen, I mean, no offense to Microsoft and Sony, but the games, while they look fantastic and look amazing, they just not fun. I'm sorry. I just have to say that.
Sure.
And the one thing I've always loved about Nintendo is that while they are not the biggest powerhouse, like in terms like the Switch may not be the most powerful console on the face of the planet, one cannot deny the games are so much fun, and that's why you have people spending over 300 hours on Tears of the Kingdom, and because Nintendo made sure that it was fun first and foremost. And so, yeah, I'm kind of like you. If this system does reach 4K of any kind, I do believe that it will be from the dock only. It'll be kind of, you dock it. It'll be blasting 4K on your wonderful TV, and then whenever you take it out, it'll be like 1080 HD, 60 frames per second.
Well, and something Nintendo has proven like over and over again is that they can make games that look good. Like Metroid Prime Remastered looks amazing. Mario Wonder looks amazing. Even Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, they look really good, and it's because they're stylized. They're not going for the highest graphical, complexity or whatever. They're just trying to make, like you said, fun games. And I think that this isn't really part of the discussion, but I think that has also led to a lot of their older games just looking a lot better. Like Wind Waker still looks really good from the GameCube. You look at PS2 games and they look horrible for the most part. So I think that goes into it as well, and that's like just goes on what Nintendo prioritizes. So again, if it is going to be 4K, like you're saying, in the dock, and it's not going to be native, it's going to be upscaled through technology and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of like what you were saying too. Nintendo makes sure that their games do and are able to stand the test of time. Wind Waker, I'm kind of glad that you brought up Wind Waker. Wind Waker's a huge example. That game originally came out in 2003, but that was 20 years ago, and it still looks amazing today, and it's the only reason I still have my Wii U at all.
Yeah.
Nintendo, why have you not ported that game to Switch yet? It blows my mind that game and Twilight Princess, both of those are not on Switch yet. If they would do that, every major 3D Zelda game would be on the Switch. If they just did that.
Yeah.
But I guess Nintendo doesn't like money. So anyhow, I guess the next major thing to kind of talk about is the potential launch lineup that this system will have. Because if there's anything that will make a system a success, is its launch lineup. And the reason why Nintendo blew it out of the park from day one with the Switch's release is because it had a day one game that everybody was waiting for, and that was Zelda Breath of the Wild. And so I guess the next thing to kind of talk about is kind of what our predictions might be in terms of a launch lineup. And so do you have any idea of what they might have in mind for possibly a launch lineup? I'll let you go first.
Yeah. Okay, I have some ideas. I think we're not getting Zelda because we just got, that. A lot of people are saying Metroid Prime 4. I don't think it's going to be Prime 4 because that's not as much of a household name, even though, hey, it should be. I'm not saying that I don't like the game, but it's not quite, to the level of Mario and Zelda yet. So I think we're going to get a brand new 3D Mario. We haven't gotten a new 3D Mario since Odyssey, and I guess we got Bowser's Fury, but that was more of a test. So I think we're going to get something in the realm of Bowser's Fury, open world Mario. That's how they're going to sell it. And it's going to look amazing, play amazing, and just be like the biggest expansion of the Mario universe we've ever seen.
Yeah, I totally, you and I kind of had the same prediction on that end. I was kind of...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was thinking about a brand new 3D Mario and how it was going to possibly expand upon Bowser's Fury, because Bowser's Fury, even though it's a short campaign, it's one of my favorite Mario experiences on the Switch. Dare I say even a little bit better than Mario Odyssey, in my opinion, because it is an open world. It is a small open world 3D Mario game, and you can go to basically any of these small islands that you want to and do anything in any order. And having that on a much bigger expansion, and I'm excited because the Bowser fights in that game were amazing, like having Mario become gigantic and fighting giant Mario versus giant Bowser and all that. I thought that was really cool.
Godzilla.
Yeah. And so being able to expand upon that and just having, a much bigger Mushroom Kingdom, or if it's even, it may not even be in the Mushroom Kingdom, but a much bigger world to explore is just that's just exciting to think about.
It's so about the Mario thing. It's so impressive with how much they've changed up 2D Mario and made it awesome and weird and wacky with Wonder. I feel like that's definitely going to translate, and we're going to get some crazy, like, out of this world things in the next Mario. And I think that's the perfect thing to market the next Switch alongside.
Yeah, and on going back to kind of what you're talking about with Metroid Prime 4, while I do kind of agree with you that it may not be a launch title, I do think it might be in like those first couple of trailers showing
for sure
how powerful the system will be. Because if there's anything that can show how powerful or how graphically amazing that this system can be, it's Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime Remastered looked amazing on just the big Switch. And so Metroid Prime 4 is probably going to look just jaw-droppingly beautiful when we see it for the first time. While it may not be a launch title, I do believe that it will probably be in that first like Switch announcement trailer for like 5 seconds. Like, here's how it looks, and then they're going to move on. Just kind of like what they did with Mario Odyssey. They showed it for like 5 seconds and they moved on, and we didn't even know what it was called yet. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, like you're saying, like that is a perfect way to position the Switch or the next successor. It's like, this is not this is not your Switch that you have right now. This is next gen. This is gonna look crazy. You show that with Metroid. Even if people don't even know what Metroid is, like the mass market, they're going to see how impressive that looks. And then alongside of it, they have the name brand Mario. So it's like, yeah, I think that's like the perfect storm, is both of those kind of coming out, like Mario first title, and then like the third, we have some sort of like multiplayer filler, and then the third title is Metroid in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you have another prediction? What's another game you think might be on this launch table?
The launch lineup, they always do like weird, random, smaller games. And I'm thinking we are going to get a new Donkey Kong game, and I only say it's smaller because it's 2D. I think there is so much possibility of the new DK being held for the first for the new system, and I don't know if it's gonna launch alongside this, the Mario, if that's what we get, but I think we have so much potential to get a new Donkey Kong because it needs to happen. Like, it's been like almost 10 years, and the last Donkey Kong that came out is literally one of the best games ever created. I will die on that hill. So, like, it just we need it, and I'm just wishing it into existence, honestly.
Yeah, well, that's another game that's been very rumored for a long time now, like a new 3D Donkey Kong. I was excited to hear your thoughts on the new Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake because I saw it, because I grew up on that game. That was the game that I got for Christmas and played on my DS. And so when I saw that,
my bad.
When that was coming out on Switch, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then I knew how big of a Donkey Kong fan you are. I was like, let's go see what Josie thinks. Ah, okay, no.
I was so mad. Yeah. No, I can, that's probably a good game. It's just not what we need. It's just another port. It's just not what I wanted. But yeah, what else do you think for the Switch lineup?
So I think this is long overdue. A brand new Mario Kart. I think that's got to be saved.
Yeah.
For the next system. I think once this last DLC pack releases, Wave 6, Mario Kart 8 is officially going to be done. Unless Nintendo comes out in the next Direct and be like, here's Booster Course Pass 2, and they have 6 more waves coming out over the next, I hope they don't do that, but I feel like that's got to happen. They've got to be working on a new Mario Kart for the next system. The Switch has shown how successful Mario Kart as a franchise is, and so I would imagine they've got to be prepping that for the next system, whatever that system is. And so,
yeah. No, I am praying that you are right. There is a lot of people who are being pessimistic, and they think that once it's all bundled up, they port that whole bundle of Mario Kart with all the DLC to the next system. I'm actually gonna die if Nintendo does that. I'm gonna lose my mind. You guys thought I was mad about Donkey Kong or Metroid? That is gonna get me over. I'm gonna freak out. That just cannot happen.
And what's crazy is, that seems like a very Nintendo thing for them to do.
It is the most Nintendo thing to do, and that's why I'm scared.
Because let's go back to when Mario Kart 8 Deluxe first released. It released with that Triforce Cup and the DLC that was in, all the DLC that was in the base game.
The Wii U.
From the Wii U. All they did was port all of that over to the Switch. And so they could very well do that again. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's...
Every time I'm like, oh, I want a new Mario Kart game, the Spawncast guys just bring me down to earth and humble me so fast with the fact that they're probably just gonna do that. I'm like, oh... No.
Yeah, they'll just give it the Smash treatment. They'll call it Mario Kart Ultimate. That's what they'll call it. There you go. Everything, all the stuff ported over from Mario Kart Tour and all that stuff. Which, to be fair, all the stuff that they've ported over has been fantastic. I've enjoyed all that deal.
Yeah, it's been great. We need a new game because we need the gameplay to change up a little bit. At least different physics. It's the same for so long that it's.
Yeah, that came out, how long ago was that? That came out in 2014, so that was 9 years ago? Almost 10 years. That's insane. And so, it's crazy. Yeah, they need to change it up, and that's why I think that they've got to have something like that in development.
Yeah.
And so,
and that would be a fantastic launch game as well.
That with a brand new 3D Mario. Both of those out on the same day, people would go crazy.
Yeah, that would crush. That would crush.
People would go crazy, And I think also another potential game they could do, because you mentioned ARMS earlier, and that is a game that I'm surprised hasn't gotten a sequel yet. I thought, that was something that would take off. I bought that on the day one of its release and loved it, still love it. So
Yeah.
it would be really cool if they came out with a sequel for that. So that, I mean, I think
I
that's,
agree. Yeah, I think that'd be a great one for like a little bit later in the Switch, or in the next systems like lineup, like the next couple months or something, like that fun new IP that people will remember from the Switch. Yeah, I'd love to see a new Arms. The first video I ever made that did well on YouTube was about Arms. So
yeah. But going back to kind of what you were saying, yeah, as far as Zelda goes, I think it's gonna be a while before we see the next big Zelda title because
yeah,
we just got Tears of the Kingdom, and great game,
yeah,
and we've seen that a game that is that good takes a long time to make, and so
right.
it's gonna be a while before we see the next Zelda title, but for
I
sure.
think we will see it. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I think we're probably gonna see a 2D title before the next 3D one.
Yeah, and I've made some videos about what the next Zelda title could be, and about the next like possible 2D game. And there was at a time they had planned to make the Oracle games instead of Oracle of Ages and Seasons 2 games. They had planned to make that 3, and the third game ended up getting cut. And so I was really hoping and kind of speculating that maybe they could give us the third and final Oracle game that was cut. So I thought that would be really cool, and they could give it to us in like the Link's Awakening style that they did with that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
With that remake, I just thought it'd be really cool. Or if they really wanted to get a bunch of classic Zelda fans hyped, remake A Link to the Past. Like that's considered like one of the best.
Oh, that'd be sick. Or if they remade that first game, like that would be perfect, cause that one is really one of the only like top-down Zeldas that doesn't hold up great. So if they remade that, that would kill. That would be awesome.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you an old Zelda game that desperately needs a remake, and the reason why I say that is because I think the game is amazing in terms of like just level design and everything. Zelda 2. Zelda 2 needs a remake so bad. And the reason why I say that is because there's so many things that they could change up to make the gameplay better, because I love like the dungeons and the boss fights, and even just everything about it is a lot of fun. And I think, but there are so many things that just hold it back, and I'm still waiting for you to retro review that game, so
Someday. All the Zelda games take so long to play through. It's the one thing. I mean, they're great, and it's great that they have value like that, but if you're trying to marathon them, it's brutal. Unless you're like you and just can do it for some reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment, so I play them all on the hardest settings. So there's that. But I kind of do agree with you. Another 2D game, or maybe finally porting Wind Waker and Twilight Princess would hold fans over. Please, Nintendo, do it. But
yeah, I totally think that's something that. Sorry, but I think that's something that they could totally do while the other system is like launch. Like, oh, also the still coming to the Switch. The Switch is still going to be around for a couple of years.
Speaking of kind of like ports and everything, and kind of like porting these games over, kind of leads into another big topic of discussion when it comes to the next system: backwards compatibility and the transition. This is a huge topic of discussion, I know, about whether this next system is going to, be backwards compatible with the Switch library and everything, because one cannot deny the Switch has a huge library that has, I believe right now there's like over 1,000 games on the eShop. It's insane. And so the question is Nintendo going to bring all that over? And my thoughts, honestly, is yes and no. I think some of their big games like Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Odyssey, Splatoon, all of their big IPs, Smash Brothers Ultimate, all those games, I think they will be playable in the next system. But I think there are going to be some that they do discard. However, like games like Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, I believe that game will be backwards compatible, because there's no way, because that's a game that people have clamored for on the Switch for a long time, and a game that I thought would never come at all. It'd be really strange for Nintendo to be like, yeah, here's Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, the game that you've clamored for a long time, and then, oh, by the way, here's the next system, and you can't play that game anymore.
Well, and the amount of legacy that they have on the Switch, just things like they have every single Pikmin game on the Switch. Like, why would you just throw that away? I get people will rebuy them. You can sell a couple extra copies, but it's such a terrible consumer practice, and it's going to make so many people so upset that I almost feel like it's more worth it than like to lose a little bit of money but keep this good grace with fans and then they will continue to buy every single first party game. I would hate it if this thing wasn't back compatible, because I've invested so much into the Nintendo Switch ecosystem. I buy almost every first party game. It's, maybe it's not the best financial decision. I don't really care, but it's just, it'd be really sad because, maybe Metroid Prime 4 comes out next system. Can't we play Prime remastered on it? That sucks. The 3D Mario comes out. Why can't we play Bowser's Fury and Odyssey? I think it makes almost no sense for them to not allow backwards compatibility. So I'm just praying that it happens.
Yeah.
Because it almost needs to be there. And look at their history, especially handheld. Nintendo always does back compatibility, except the only time they did it was the 3DS to the Switch, and that was because it's a whole different cartridge medium. But if you look at it like DS to 3DS, they're back. There's a whole DS and a 3DS. Even things all the way back to like the DS, it had a whole other cartridge slot for the Game Boy Advance games, just so that it had backwards compatibility for it. I think it's possible. I don't think Nintendo's going to go that far. Nice to us consumers and give us a whole other slot if it's a different cartridge. But I think it makes sense for them to keep with similar cartridges that they have, where literally just is a Switch and it's better, and there's a new system in there as well, which is what they've done forever. I mean, the Wii was a souped cube with models. The Wii U fully backwards compatible with the Wii.
Yeah, I totally agree. And plus, I think the biggest hint that it's going to be backwards compatible in some way is NSO. Like, if suddenly they threw away NES, SNES, N64, Game Boy Advance, all of their legacy stuff that they brought over, because they've pretty much brought over almost every era of Nintendo onto this one system. And my thought has always been, and I've talked about it on my channel quite a few times, when NSO first came out, it was the laughing stock of Nintendo. Like, people were laughing.
Right.
Like, this isn't worth $20. This is not worth it. And then they raised the price to $50 when N64 stuff came over. Like, this is not worth it.
Right.
I truly do believe that when this next system releases and when NSO carries over, if it carries over, I believe it will be one of Nintendo's greatest strengths, because when Nintendo shows off all these great new games, they're going to say, hey, look it has all these great, beautiful new graphics, beautiful new big games, but hey, all of Nintendo is basically in one place now. NES, SNES, Game Boy Advance, N64,
Yeah.
GameCube remasters, and a lot of they've remastered a lot of Wii games, and they brought over Wii U games. Like, all of Nintendo's, every era of Nintendo would basically be on one system. And so I think Nintendo Switch Online is going to be one of Nintendo's biggest assets before it's over with. And so
yeah, I completely agree. I think NSO, even regardless if the next system is backwards compatible or not, I think NSO is going. I don't even think it's in the question of not being a thing. Like, it has to. It'd be crazy if they built out this whole thing and just dropped it. It'd be like if Xbox created Game Pass and then they released a new system and they were like, sorry, we don't, no more Game Pass. I know it's like half the reason people buy this thing, and obviously not totally the same with the Switch, but it's what gives that entire service value. So I think they know that too, and I am fairly positive that has to be on the next system. But yeah, I love the idea of all Nintendo in one place, and that'd be great. That'd be the ideal solution. I'm a little bit worried because Nintendo doesn't do what the smart thing is half the time. So we shall see.
Yeah, and so I guess, the next topic of discussion really when it comes to all of this is, when do we see this thing even coming out? Because we talked about a launch lineup, we talked about the life cycle, and all of that takes a lot of time to build, especially a killer launch lineup, which is what the Switch had. The Switch had a killer launch lineup with, had Zelda on day one, and then not too long after that we had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and then not long after that we had ARMS, and then Splatoon, and they had a steady flow of releases, and for them to
I mean, we got a Zelda and a Mario in 1 year. That's huge.
Yes, and for them to replicate that again, they're going to have to take a lot of time to build that. And so I really think that in terms of when this next system's going to release, my honest if we're first off, before I get into my prediction, if we're going off of what Nintendo said, I did some digging and went back into some of Nintendo's old investor meetings. This was a quote from Furukawa. This is what he said whenever he was asked about the life cycle. This was back when the Switch was in its 5th year. He said, "The Switch is just in the middle of its life cycle at this moment, and the momentum going into this year is good. The Switch is ready to break a pattern of our past consoles that saw momentum weakening in their 6th year on the market and grow further." So he said that the system, while in its 5th year, was halfway over, was in the middle of his life cycle, which means that they wanted to carry it far past 6 years, 7 years. They wanted to carry this thing into a 10-year life cycle at most, which means if they are planning on doing that, the system is coming out at 2027 at the latest, because it came out in 2017. 10 years later would be 2027. Right. And you can kind of see that they're trying to keep the momentum high with, a lot of these remasters that are coming out, Paper Mario and all these, like they're trying to keep the momentum there. And so my personal prediction, I think it's going to be 2025 to 2027. That's kind of my range of when I expect the next system to drop. They've said it. It's in writing. It's what they were telling their investors, the people who matter, honestly, a lot more than us fans. I mean, we give them money. Right. We buy their products, but, their investors are what really keep their boat afloat, if you will. And so if this is what they're saying to the much bigger people, I mean, we can't just ignore that. I really do believe that that's probably when it's going to release, probably around 2025 to 2027 at the latest.
Yeah. In my head, I'm leaning towards either holiday 2024, which is soon, or March 2025. And that's only because I can see them supporting the Switch for a very long time. Like, they supported the 3DS for a while when the Switch came. It was like 2 years there where the 3DS was still getting games. And I think the 3DS was dying. The Switch isn't dying. So, like, with a healthy launch lineup, if it comes out next year, that's going to be 7 years. So it's going to have 3 good years to do everything it needs to do. And I think that's really realistic. Or I can totally see another March launch date. And there is absolutely zero chance in any way, any universe, anything, it is coming out in March of 2024. That is psychotic to think. So, it would be logically March 2025 in my head, because then that would give them those 2 years to have this strong fade out of the Nintendo Switch, some cross-platform games, stuff like that. And we've seen that is a pretty big trend. Like PS4 games and PS5 games, they are cross-compatible. Only like this year have they started to sort of stop putting both games on the systems. And so that is like 3.5 years after those systems came out, right? So like I think it makes sense with the Switch to carry through it a little bit. And I have been a little bit swayed, I think, into thinking that it's going to be at the end of this year, but we shall see. I mean, nobody really knows. It's all just like guesswork and stuff, but
right.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the point you made about they start out as kind of cross-gen releases. Like, I feel like Metroid Prime 4 is a perfect example. I believe that game's going to be a cross-gen release.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that teaser trailer way back in 2017 said that it was in development for the Switch. And I do believe that a lot of people probably bought a Switch to play the game on the Switch. And so I really hope that that's the case for Metroid and for a bunch of other games. It kind of starts out that way, and then I guess like you were talking about, they slowly start to phase it out and start to move everything over. And so, and even then they could still kind of say, the Switch had a 10-year life cycle, because let's say if it came out,
yeah, exactly,
yeah, because let's just say if it came out in like 2025, that's year number 8 for the Switch, I believe. Yeah, it's year number 8 for the base Switch. They could spend 2 years, slowly
phasing it out. Yeah,
phasing it out, and then,
that's why. Yeah, that's like the reason I've been like, oh, maybe I can see it being holiday 2024. Like, we're talking December 2024. It is almost 2025. Like, that is why I can sort of see it being like, okay, we're going to have this time to sort of phase out the Switch. And on top of which, they're going to be like, oh, it's backwards compatible, hopefully. So all of those games, did you buy Metroid Prime for the Nintendo Switch? That's fine. Now you can bring it to your new system. Like, I think it'll get a lot of people to move over as well, and it won't be so jarring. Like, if they just dropped off a cliff with the Switch and stopped supporting it, why? Like, there's no reason to do that. They have such a huge install base. You might as well keep drip feeding until it organically fades away, and it can easily be pushed to the next system.
Yeah, absolutely. And that way everyone is satisfied. All the Switch owners and
Yeah.
people who are ready to jump for the next system, because I know there's a lot of people out there who are like, I'm ready to jump to the next system. I was ready 2 years ago. And so,
Right.
but the one thing I think that is so important, especially with all the rumors and speculation out there, is don't get your hopes up when it comes to Nintendo making an announcement anytime soon. Because, I mean, there are people out there who every day, it seems like, that it's coming. The announcement is imminent, guys. It's actually, it's tomorrow, guys. Like, at 7 p.m. tomorrow, it will actually be announced. And it never does, and I think it's so important to just keep your expectations in check. That way, you're not burned like me and Josie were with the Switch OLED announcement. So
yes,
because
don't take anything as the truth or even our predictions. Just watch it, have a good time, and wait for Nintendo, because they are the only people that can actually tell us what's happening. The leakers can claim that they're the most reliable guy ever, but half the time they're wrong too. So just don't trust any of it.
Yeah, and I think what's also really important to keep in mind is I would just enjoy the era of Nintendo that we're in right now, because I think we all remember the Wii U days. They were dry. It was a drought. It was like a Nintendo game was coming out maybe one big Nintendo game came out once a year during that life cycle. In terms of the era of Nintendo that we're in right now is probably it's like the NES boom of our generation, pretty much. Nintendo, because when Nintendo launched the NES back years ago, it was a reviving of the video game industry, and people were going crazy and buying games all over the place.
Yeah.
And with the Switch, people of all generations are doing that again. They did it with the Wii. They're doing it again with Switch. And it's a great time to be a Nintendo fan. And I think one of the reasons we didn't really talk about this was one of the reasons why I think we haven't seen the system yet. And that is, I think they've seen how successful the Switch is, and I think they want to keep that going for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah, I agree. And also what you were saying about just appreciating the time that we're in, it's Nintendo has not made totally new IPs like they were doing with the NES boom, but they reinvented almost every single one of their amazing IPs. We got a reimagining, essentially, of what a Zelda game can be. All open world. This is the new exciting thing that's going to bring it to the forefront. Kirby finally went 3D. Mario had his open world foray. Smash has everything ever you could ever want. There's all of these amazing things on the Switch, and yeah, I agree. I think people just forget, and they're we need a new system, and it's you could stop and realize that the thing in front of you right now, maybe it's not the most powerful, but has some of the best games of the last decade.
Yeah, and I think Mario Wonder is a perfect example of that, because when it was first announced, and I saw that they were going to do another 2D Mario, my first impressions of it were oh, it's another 2D Mario. Great, it's cool, it's awesome. And then I actually played the thing, and oh my gosh, it really took everything about 2D Mario and completely turned it on its head and reinvented it. With the wonder effects and changing up. It's not just getting to the flagpole anymore. It's looking for those wonder flowers and going through, changing up the levels, and it's a brand new way to play it. And it's then of course they also made a brand new art style for it, which I also found out that they actually used the engine from Tears of the Kingdom for this. I didn't realize.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's why it looks so gorgeous, is because they used that. I was like, wow, that's really cool that they used it for a Mario game. And so but yeah, I think Mario Wonder is a huge example of that, of how they took something that was so classic and completely reinvented it. And that kind of we're talking about the this era of Nintendo, and I think this is a great thing to kind of end the discussion on. Nintendo is kind of moving into a new era. We heard earlier this year that Charles Martinet is stepping down as the voice of Mario. He won't be the voice of Mario anymore. Still going to be like actively involved with Nintendo, just won't be voicing Mario in future games. But with him, and Nintendo is moving into film. We had the crazy success of the Mario movie this year. Nintendo is moving into new territory, and with the eventual arrival of their next-gen system, it's going to be a completely new playing field than it was back in 2017. And so I guess the next thing kind of to talk about is kind of like where Nintendo may go in the future, and kind of like their IP and being adapted into film. Mario was a great adaptation to the movie screen. I was really shocked by how good that was. And so,
me too.
Yeah. And so I guess my next question is, what would you want to see adapted onto the big screen next? What would you want to see adapted to film next?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it'd be great to see Metroid. I think they could. I think if they went live action with it and almost did like a loving recreation of Alien, it could be amazing, because it could be like a nod to how Ridley is named after Ridley Scott from Alien, and like it can go back, and it's just it'd be so good. And I'm like in this era of sci-fi thrillers that I love, and I think like what a power move if Nintendo did that. They came out with Mario, and then the next one they were like, yeah, this is actually like a PG-13 like thriller about Metroid, or about Samus, and that also like maybe bring a bunch of new fans in. Like that could sort of push Samus to the limelight. They'd be like, oh, you remember Alien? You love Alien? This is the new Alien and stuff. And all the new Alien movies suck. So like if this thing comes out, it'd be awesome. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, Nintendo does have a history of taking things that are just terrible and bringing them into their own limelight and making them shine and making them just amazing. So like if they did Metroid, it would no doubt it would bring in a ton of new fans, because Metroid deserves to be on that pedestal alongside Zelda and Mario.
Yeah, it does.
Because I feel like it's a franchise that Nintendo just sleeps on. And to their credit, every single time a Metroid game has released, up until recently with Dread and Metroid Prime Remaster, has not sold that great. And it's usually honestly, I think it's due to their release timing and the console that it's released on. Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2 released on the GameCube, which was not a great successful console when it released. And then when you had Metroid Prime 3 released kind of in the middle era of the Wii's life cycle. And at that point, there was not a whole lot of people who were exposed to Metroid Prime because of the GameCube and all that. And it wasn't until like the Switch era that a lot of people started being exposed to Metroid, thanks to NSO and all these other things.
Yeah.
And so I really do think if they brought Metroid to the big screen, oh my goodness. And as a Star Wars fan, as someone who loves like the space type, I just think they could do amazing things with that. Just if there's anything that they should not do not make the voice acting or anything, or like do not make that plot anything like Metroid Other M. That is the that is the example of what not to do.
Oh God.
With a Metroid storyline with Metroid, because that is the one and only Metroid game that has voice acting, that has like it feels like a Metroid movie, a really bad Metroid movie. But yeah, it's if they were to do that, just look to that blueprint of don't do it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And like I think it'd be so funny, this is random, but if they cast Margot Robbie, I think it'd be freaking awesome as her as Samus.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I think she'd do a good job. Absolutely.
Barbie would kill as Samus.
Oh my goodness. And especially after the success of that movie, I never went to see that movie, but
what? You have to watch it. It's so good.
I don't know if it overtook the Mario movie or not. I know it came real close. They were like neck and neck.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But one of them came out on top, but the other one was not far behind. Like it was it was really close. So
yeah.
But yeah, in terms of me, you know me, I'm just a sucker for Zelda. Getting to see Hyrule on the big screen would be amazing. And there's a lot of people who are wondering whether or not it should be animated or live action. I feel like if they were to go, I feel like they could go either route. I feel like the live action, I feel like, to bring more audiences in, they would probably go the animated route. And having something kind of similar to the degree of Ocarina of Time in terms of like the animation, because Ocarina of Time is kind of a mix of, happy, friendly, it's a good, good time. And Ocarina of Time is also known for its darker elements. If they wanted to kind of mesh that both of those genres together, I feel like something on the kin of Ocarina of Time would be really well done. Or if they wanted something just kind of more upon the lines of just, a wild, kind of more cheerful adventure, kind of similar to what Mario was, Wind Waker. Wind Waker is a good example.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Because Wind Waker is a very bright atmosphere all the way from start to finish, but Ocarina of Time has some dark moments. So, but
that'd be great to see it animated. I think an animated Zelda would definitely be like a great way to go. Because I feel like if they made it live action, it'd have a hard time differentiating itself from like Lord of the Rings and stuff, even though it's very different. But people would just group it in, especially if you're not familiar with it as much. So if they animated it, it'd like fit in very nicely right there with Mario. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I know something that a lot of people would love to see. It's not happening for a long time. Super Smash Brothers. People want Super Smash Brothers on the screen. I've seen it.
Yeah, sure.
People are ready.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. But I know
they need to have like 40 years of making movies before they can do that, like they did with video games. They can maybe put them all together.
Yeah, and of course Sakurai would have to be heavily involved with that, and I know it took him forever just to get Ultimate ready to go for Switch.
Yeah.
But
a movie's a different beast.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, in terms of like, I thought about this, expanding on the lore of the F-Zero series, having like
that'd be cool.
Like, I think like
that'd be awesome.
An F-Zero film would be pretty insane. You could explore like what the life in Mute City is like, what Captain Falcon's life is like.
So cool, like a slice of life movie, but like it's Captain Falcon. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty insane. There's so many things that Nintendo can do.
Like a Punch-Out movie, and it's like Rocky but animated. Oh, that would kill. I would die for that movie. I would die for that movie. My favorite thing ever is sports movies. That would kill.
I think my dad would love a Punch-Out film as well, because he played a lot of Punch-Out, and still when they brought that over with NSO, he played that a lot on my Switch, and I was like,
yeah.
And so, yeah, if they did that and kind of made it, because Rocky is also one of his favorite films of all time, and so if they kind of merged that together, me and him go into the movies day one. If that came out.
Crush.
So
also, I just looked up the box office. So Barbie sold 1.44 billion, and Mario sold 1.36 billion. So
it was close.
Barbie did overtake it. Yeah, but
bummer. But still, it was.
Barbie's vibey. But yeah, no, Mario was good too.
Yeah, but for the record, it just seems like Nintendo has so many options, and it does show that Nintendo's not afraid to just take that next step. And we know that more Nintendo movies are coming because Nintendo they bought like a separate studio and renamed it to Nintendo Pictures. And so it seems so I do believe that it's probably going to be a while from now, but more movies are definitely on the way, whether it's Zelda, Punch-Out, F-Zero, whatever the case may be, and so there's just so many things that we have.
No, I think we're definitely going to see more movies. I think the only thing with movies is that they almost take longer than games, so we're going to be waiting probably a good 5 years before we see something else. But in the meantime, we have the parks and stuff too, which is cool. I mean, Nintendo's really expanding into like everything. I mean, they have a stake in theme parks and in movies and in all sorts of different media, which is awesome.
Yeah. So there's so many options and so many things to look forward to in terms of the next gen system. It's still not here. It hasn't been announced yet. And in terms of like possibilities of when it could be announced, that is all really still up in the air. So much speculation out there. Some people say it could be announced in the next 3 weeks. or every month. If it happens, great.
People are crazy. Don't listen to them.
If it happens, great. If it doesn't, enjoy the great library that is on the current system right now before before everything really does transition over to the next system. Because when that transition does start to happen, Nintendo will not slow down with that. We can use Tears of the Kingdom as a prime example. Like, for the longest time, I was like, Nintendo is totally skipping out on how big of a Zelda release this is going to be. Like, they've shown almost nothing of this. And then, like, a month before it released, just boom, 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 all kinds of coverage.
So much hype.
So much hype and so much spotlight on it. And I was like, okay, so Nintendo knows how to focus. They're just waiting for that right time to strike. And I do believe that that's what they're doing with this next system. They're waiting for that. And so, but yeah, this has been such an awesome...
I completely agree.
This has been such an awesome discussion, Josie. Thank you so much for joining me and talking about all things, Switch Pro and the next system, and where Nintendo could go. Where can people find you? This has been awesome.
You can find me at Josie Woah on YouTube. I make Nintendo Switch content and retro reviews sometimes. I'm experimenting around with some different video types because I want to see what's cool and what's not. So check it out if you like that kind of stuff. Also, if you came from my channel, please subscribe to Nintendo Memories, especially if you got this far in the video. I mean, it's crazy that you're not already subscribed to him, okay? Thank you again for having me on. I appreciate it a lot.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to have you, and it's really cool to see how far you've grown. And yes, almost at 700 subscribers. Please get me there.
Let's go.
I want to get to 1K before the end of the year. Hopefully it happens.
Let's go.
We're almost there. So,
let's go.
But anyways, thank you so much, Josie. And for those of you who watched this all the way through, thank you all so much for watching. And until the next video, take care, everyone.